All right, so let's see if we can kind of understand a little bit more what we mean by an ethical dilemma. Because there's this one, it's spelled wrong. There's a very specific thing that we're after in an ethical dilemma. Maybe this helps. I don't know. Let me switch colors. So the word dilemma comes from two Greek words, the di meaning two, and this lemma, L-E-M-M-A, means proposition. So, in other words, you're proposing two things at the same time with a dilemma. So the idea of a dilemma is that there are two possible, or more actually, but generally two. At least if there's more options available, the dilemma is between two each time. But anyways, you're proposing that both of these are possible, and you have to make a choice among, and here's the important thing, principles. Not outcomes, not what we vote for, but the principle or the idea behind it. Let me give you kind of an example. I'm going to erase this a little bit. And the reason that we're going to spend some time here is that a lot of people in doing their ethical dilemmas actually either narrate an experience that's kind of a story, or they will give you a practical solution, not a conflict of principles. Let's take something like plagiarism, all right? So plagiarism. The first thing is, a lot of people might say, if you're asked, okay, share an experience in which you had an ethical dilemma about plagiarism. You're like, okay, I shouldn't do it because it's bad. It's not so simple. So first we have to look at the principles behind it, right? And so a principle is basically an idea you act on. So here's a few. I'm going to list some things and then kind of go back in more detail. So, should I plagiarize? Let's put a question mark. If I say yes, I should, and then why? Because it saves me time. Okay? Should I plagiarize? Yes. Why? Because it gets me a good grade. Right? Should I plagiarize? No, because I could get caught. Should I plagiarize? No, because it is deceitful. Should I plagiarize? No, because it doesn't help me. It doesn't help develop me. Okay, so anyway, here, these would be possibilities all right here, right? Let me switch colors. So these are all like options or possibilities, right? Here. But what are the principles behind it? So if we look at all of these possibilities and then check out the principles, like what would we be acting on? Efficiency. Would you agree that it is good to be efficient, right? Yeah, you don't want to waste time. Right? You don't want to double up on things. Would you agree that it's good to get good grades? Right? Absolutely. So how about good short-term outcome? Yeah, because that's the whole point in school, is to get a good grade, right? So, if you plagiarize, then you're likely to get a good grade. But what about getting caught? Well, then that would be fear of the consequences, right? So the principle is, don't do things that you don't like consequences of. To be deceitful, what's the thing there? Well, don't lie, basically, right? In other words, good character. So it's an issue of virtue. Be virtuous. And it won't help develop me, right? So the deal is that you should improve yourself. Work hard to improve yourself. So in themselves, these are all good principles, aren't they? Be efficient. Absolutely. You should have good short-term outcomes, for sure. You don't want to have negative consequences. That's a good one too. You shouldn't lie. You should be virtuous. Absolutely. And you should improve yourself. These are all good principles in themselves. Where the dilemma comes in is that you can't necessarily have them all at the same time. For instance, if you're going to say to yourself that, well, I definitely want to be efficient and I want to improve myself, right? So let's call this one A and we'll call this one B. So when we try to put A and B together, we might find that actually improving ourselves is contrary to being efficient. Because to improve yourself means to do a lot of work, right? And as you know, writing your own stuff, doing your own, research and your own writing is time consuming and takes a lot of effort. In fact, it's kind of the opposite of efficient, isn't it, in many regards? So A and B can't both be true at the same time. They are both good on their own, good principles, but in this situation, you can't choose both. So you have to choose one. So which do you prefer, or which principle are you going to weigh out? Like, what one are you going to give priority to? And so think of it like this, right? We got our little scales here. Okay, these are bad pictures, I know, but just bear with me. And on our scales, right, which is gonna weigh more, A or B? And however that goes, if A weighs more than B, then you will decide in favor of A, and so you would cheat. And you would say, the ethical dilemma is I chose to plagiarize because my efficiency of time was the priority. So I did it. Then we would, on the other side, we could say, if it was the opposite, and we'd say that B outweighs A, right? So B is more weighty to us, then we're not going to plagiarize, because what's more important to us is that we improve ourselves, which is the whole point of an education. So then I'm not going to plagiarize. But notice what I've done here is I've gotten into the principles. In other words, I've looked at the ideas behind what would motivate the actions. In other words, I've looked at the whys and I've isolated them so I could take out at least two, right? So if I were to write about an ethical dilemma of plagiarism, I would look at two of these things and I would say, here's why you would do this, here's why you would do that. I chose to do this decision because. And that's an ethical dilemma. You're looking at the ethical principles, not the consequences. You're not explaining, just telling somebody that something is bad. That's about rules, not a principle. Ethical dilemmas are about principles, wherein there are at least two true principles going on at the same time. And you need to prioritize. And it is not so easy to prioritize these sometimes in any given situation. And that's the whole thing about the difficulty with ethical dilemmas, is because the principles are true. It's just in some situations they can't both be acted on at the same time. You have to choose one versus the other. That's a dilemma.